Welcome to the Running Network Show. Join us each time as we explore the people, the places, and the events that shape our great sport.
Okay, hello everyone. Well, I'm interviewing here a past champion, a woman's pioneer in the sport, three-time winner. When the race before, they had women's champions, but she got out there and ran, Sara Mae Berman. So she'll tell us a little about her experiences running Boston and her lifelong passion of sports since then.
Well, remember, I was born at a time when women didn't really do very many sports, long before Title IX. And when I was in high school, we played half-court basketball, and we had little frilly gym suits. And I was sort of interested when I married my husband, because he came from a high school where they did lots of sports, and from MIT College where they did lots of sports, and he thought I ought to get into running. So I did, and he told me he ran a 10-mile race, and I said, "You run the whole way? You don't stop and walk?" And he laughed at me, and he said, "If you stop, you don't win." So that was a lesson. And then he got me running, and at one point I ran 2 whole miles on the MIT track, and I said, "Well, now I've done it." And he said, "Yes, and now you have to do it faster." And eventually I did. And I eventually got up to 5 miles on the track, but I couldn't break 40 minutes. And so he decided that it would be the best way for me to do that would be to get in a race, a road race, because there's people around you and there's the excitement and your adrenaline is going. And so in June of '64, I couldn't enter officially, but we showed up at this handicap race in Marlborough, Mass. And I started on the first line with 2 old men and 2 little boys. And I had a babysitter for my kids, and Larry was running, but he was starting farther back. The guys who were running were just wonderful. I started off, and I was trying to run at the pace Larry and I had rehearsed through the interval training he had me doing. And eventually some of the later starters began to pass us, and they were all encouraging. "Oh, keep it up, you're doing fine, looking good." And I ran 38:37. Which was well below 40 minutes, and I was very pleased, and Larry was very pleased, and it was an altogether wonderful experience. And this has been my experience running, because I ran in men's road races all through the 60s, and the fellas were very, very nice, because if you can cover a distance like 5 miles or 10 miles or more, you have to put in the training. And racers respect each other's training. And if I was a woman doing it, they respected my training, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't cover the distance if I hadn't put in the training. And the fellas were the most supportive when it came to pressing the officials to get longer races for women.
Well, okay, now what years did you win in Boston?
I was the first woman in '69 with a 3:22.46, I think. In 1970, I ran a 3:05.07, which was the second best time in the U.S. And in '71, I ran a 3:08. That was a hotter day. It was in the middle to upper 60s.
Now, and women, were they officially in the race at that time?
Oh, no. It wasn't until '72 when the AAU allowed Boston to enter women officially. We had to have our own starting line, they said, so it really wouldn't be that we were running with the men. We were running in parallel. But, you know, that doesn't work. What they did with the starting line was they had a section very on one side for the women. So a bunch of us were there, and the men were sort of next to us on the starting line, and then everybody ran at his or her own pace. The nice thing about the race now, and they do have a separate race time for the women, is that there are enough women to make it worthwhile. In 1972, there were 8 women. Now there are, I think, several thousand. And that makes all the difference. because if you're only a few women in a road race with lots of men, often you can't see who your competition is. But now with the women's race and enough women to make a race, you can see who your competition is, and that has to be beneficial.
Now, and I want to see your commemorative medal there. Can you show us that a little bit closer there? That is just awesome. And what year did they give you this?
Well, in 1996, they had the 100th running of the Boston Marathon, and they invited Bobby Gibb and me. Bobby was the first woman. They invited both of us back, and they gave us medals.
Awesome.
Which we weren't expecting, but we thought it was kind of nice.
Of course.
And they've been inviting us back to various events before the marathon every year. And this year they're going to make Bobby and me Grand Marshals, which means we have the pleasure of riding in an open car in front of the whole shebang.
Awesome.
And they promise that if it's a cool day, they'll bring a blanket for us.
Well, hey, still you're in front of the crowd. That's awesome. And now, well, what about your sports club you started?
Okay, in 1962, Larry and I started a sports club called the Cambridge Sports Union. And it was a club for men and women because there was one of each of us. And we recruited a whole bunch of people to the club, mostly high school kids. And I think we were the only sports club to include men and women in one club. Usually it was a club for men or a club for women. And in 1964, as we watched the Winter Olympics, the announcer came on and said, and there are no American women in this event. It was cross-country skiing. And Larry said, well, American women are softies, but you're not. Whereupon, we went down to the only store in Boston near North Station that sold cross-country skis, and we couldn't buy racing skis, because of course if you were going to take a sport, you had to go do it on a racing basis. So we ordered them. He got John Caldwell's book. John Caldwell was on the Olympics in cross-country skiing and is considered the father of cross-country skiing in this country. And he saw an announcement for a race at Mount Wachusett. Well, we had to enter that. We did, before our racing skis came, so we wore our downhill skis, which were not as heavy as they are today, and they had cable binding so your heel could lift up, and the leather boots weren't as heavy as the boots today. But it was a lot of hard work. And we knew nothing about waxing, we knew nothing about technique, but of the 3 women who entered the race, I was the only one who showed up. So I won.
Right.
Larry's race was 15 kilometers, mine was 5. So he skied the 10 and was so tired, he decided he'd better not ski the 5 because the 5 loop, because he said I'd bump into a tree or something. Remember, in those days, the trails were much narrower than they are now. So when the local photographer came to take pictures of the winners, there was a junior boy who picked up his skis and stood there proudly, and I stood beside him, and they said, "Where are your skis?" So I went to pick up my downhill skis, and the race organizers practically had heart attacks and quickly gave me a pair of cross-country skis to hold for this picture so I shouldn't embarrass them. But my time for that 5K was, I think, 57 minutes, which is extremely slow. And I was in, I think, 1 or 2 other races that winter, and then several more races the next winter. And eventually, we went to a ski training session at Dartmouth College and learned some of the techniques for training for these races. One thing that happened at that training camp was that Larry and I impressed the hell out of the organizers because we were very fit. And this was dry land, not on snow. So the tests that they had to see how fit you were showed that in a race at Mount Moosilauke, for example, which is 3 miles and something, Larry was 3rd only to the top 2 men on the national team. And I was 2nd only to the top junior boy. And they knew that we couldn't ski worth a damn, so they knew there was something in the kind of training we were doing. And the following year, this was in the late fall, the following year, they switched from having the guys train from Labor Day on. They had them train all year round, as we had been doing for running. And there was considerable improvement.
So, now did you ever try out for the Olympics in cross-country skiing?
I tried out in 1970 for the first traveling team they were going to send women on. And they were going to take 3 or 4 women. Now, you have to realize, in 1970, I was almost 35, and the other women on the team, or potential women on the team, were in their teens or early 20s. And I knew that they considered me too old.
Yes.
And the only way I would get to go on the team is if I was third. I was 5th. And after that, in 72, which was the first time they sent women to the Olympics, I was behind, well behind the women who would be going. And the leaders, of course, were Martha Rockwell and Trina Hosmer, who Trina today still wins age group races and championships. She's excellent. So that was the 2 sports, and then in 72, Larry and I began doing orienteering, and in the 80s and into the 90s, we were either team leaders or on the U.S. team for ski orienteering.
Awesome.
And we began publishing a magazine about the sport from 85 till the middle of 99. And we've had 3 children, and we have 6 grandchildren.
Been busy.
Been busy.
Now, how many times did you run Boston Marathon?
I ran Boston in 69, 70, and 71, and 72, and 73, and then not again till 77, 78, and 79.
Did you run New York?
I ran New York in 71. I was 3rd in that race. Beth Bonner was like 255, and Nina Cusick was like 256, and I was 308. It was far behind them.
But still 3 hours at that time.
But the Roadrunners Club had a marathon championship in 70 in Atlantic City, and I won that. I was a 307, and Nina was 314. So that was a good win for me.
Well, awesome. Well, you've had a great career, a woman's pioneer in the sport, and definitely great interview you. And congratulations on those previous wins when you set the standard for people for women to come after you.
Well, sport is fun.
Yes, it is.
And when you train and you can pull out a result, it is extremely satisfying. And men have known this for years, and it's good that women are being allowed to know it too. I have to tell you one thing. What was the longest sanctioned distance for women to race up to 1958?
3K.
200 meters.
Oh, yeah, that's 200. Yes, that's right. It was only 200 meters. That's right.
And it was only when in 1960 that the Rome Olympics were going to add the women's half mile that our AAU had to add not only the half but the quarter.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that. Madeline Manning was a great athlete and won those. I know it's been a succession of years, but that's great. Yep. So, well, thank you for helping out and making women's sports a big part of your life, and here in Boston and in the U.S. And definitely we appreciate it all, and it's been great interviewing you this morning.
Thank you so much for your attention.
Awesome.